A lot of very clever people try to predict the future, and most of them are wrong most of the time. So how do you bring clarity to your long-term strategy?
When I speak with leaders around the world, the same question comes up time and again. How do I look past short-term volatility, social media posts, and geopolitical shocks to make long-term decisions?
How do you properly prepare for the long term and gain advantage over your competitors? How do you use that future perspective to make better decisions today? In the next few minutes, we'll show you 4 very different visions of the future, explain the quantitative data that makes them plausible, and identify low-regret moves that are worth making now, no matter how the future develops.
When you look ahead 25 years, some aspects of the future are relatively straightforward to project. The population will be older on average, based on fertility rates and longevity today. The world will almost certainly be warmer, with implications for weather patterns and agriculture. But for other things, the range of plausible outcomes is very wide.
We analyzed hundreds of megatrends and looked back over a century of data. We brought together the BCG Institute's own experts, and we interviewed dozens more on everything from the energy transition to the space economy. And with a bit of imagination mixed in, we extrapolated not one future, but 4 contrasting visions of the year 2050.
For me, these scenarios are unique in 2 key ways. The first is the time horizon. We chose 2050 because it's effectively the limit of how far it's possible to forecast. Second, it's the focus on data. So you can say, okay, global GDP growth is 3.4% today, but it's 5% in these scenarios. How did that happen? Or extreme poverty rises from 8 to 10%. What does that mean?
The scenarios aren't a crystal ball. They represent the spectrum of potential outcomes. But by understanding what's plausible, you can better shape your long-term strategy, identify the moves to make in the next 3 to 5 years, and stress test your near-term thinking.
In the first scenario, AI abundance, the economy is thriving. You're probably working a 4-day week and productivity is high thanks to AI and robotics. But the catalyst was a series of dark events.
At some point in the 2030s, AI agents are harnessed for a series of devastating attacks on critical infrastructure. Financial systems, energy grids, and hospitals are targeted. Billions of people are affected, and there's mass panic.
In the aftermath, governments sign a multilateral treaty setting strict standards on AI models, data use, tech stacks, and much more, and combine that with a powerful international regulatory agency.
The result is a trusted suite of open-source AI models available to researchers. They rapidly accelerate scientific progress and lead to breakthroughs in medicine, energy, and materials science. Global GDP growth is at 5%, and healthy life expectancy is at 70 years old, compared with just 63 today.
You may be thinking, what about energy and climate? Well, a world with AI laced through every facet of society requires a lot of power, and in theory, a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. But AI promises further breakthroughs in low-carbon energy generation and battery technologies. It also allows much smarter, more efficient management of the grid and more impactful investments in adaptation and resilience. In this scenario, we expect global temperatures to stabilize at around 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels and for a society to be on a slow path to net zero emissions.
In the world of battling blocks, every nation is part of a major international alliance. These alliances are an enormous influence on your life. State capitalism is prevalent, and governments exert a tight control over the economy and personal life in the name of security.
The Blocs are in a tense stalemate. keeping to their own spheres of influence. For companies, this means securing new sources of critical materials and building new regional supply chains. Economic growth is sluggish. Government spending is focused on security and pensions. As in all of our scenarios, in battling blocks there is a large population of older citizens. But nations can't compensate for this with migration, as this is a very low mobility world.
The average person feels trapped. There aren't many choices when it comes to jobs, travel, or even in shops. International trade is down to 35% of GDP. That's about where it was during the Cold War, and that affects what's available. The government focus on security also means democratic freedoms are reduced. It's easy to feel powerless. It's not surprising that global happiness has fallen by 10% since the present day.
In the climate coalition scenarios, a series of extreme weather events in the 2030s shake the world. Critical infrastructure is destroyed, and tens of millions of people are affected. In the aftermath, there's a global demand for action on climate resilience and mitigation.
A combination of carbon border taxes and supportive industrial policy emerges. This fuels investment in grid infrastructure, electrification, and new low-carbon technologies. AI is essential in developing new materials for things like battery storage and for boosting efficiency. The share of unabated fossil fuel energy falls from 81% today to 35%.
The shocks of the 2030s change people's priorities. We own fewer things, but they last longer and are built to be replaced piece by piece. Consumption and growth are lower. That means taxes are high to finance climate adaptation and pensions for an aging population. This leads to tensions. Many young people in this scenario feel they're missing out, while paying for the world their parents and grandparents created.
In the world of digital Darwinism, you wake up and immediately check a dozen apps to see if you have any work that day. Mega corporations dominate all aspects of life. That's due to a race to the bottom on regulation by countries desperate to attract their investment.
Inequality is rife. The richest 1% hold nearly half of the global wealth. That's the sort of number we last saw in the industrialized societies of the early 1900s. The economy is booming and global trade is high. But for the average person, work life is very insecure, and leisure time is spent in customized AI-driven virtual realities. Digital addiction is rampant, and there's a diminishing sense of a shared reality.
The through line is technology, which is essential to this scenario. Whereas in the AI abundance scenario, this technology is regulated by governments, here it puts unprecedented power in the hands of a few companies. The infrastructure necessary to run these tech stacks makes it almost impossible to compete. So ultimately, these few companies take over almost all aspects of life, from work to social security to national defense.
We have now been talking about plausible futures, but you may be asking, where are the unimaginable changes? Where are the black swan events, like a nuclear fusion breakthrough, the emergence of AI singularity, or war in space?
It's true that these could happen. But the probability of such an event occurring is very low. And so for most organizations, they should not be an anchor for strategy. However, it's important to understand where the guardrails are for plausible outcomes and to plan accordingly.
4 plausible futures, 4 very different worlds. And you might be thinking, if the range of possible outcomes is so wide, how can you make any strategic decisions at all?
Uncertainty shouldn't mean paralysis. There are actions you can take today that strengthen your organization's position, regardless of which future arrives.
The decisions made over the next 5 years will determine how you and your organization are positioned in 2050. There aren't guaranteed no-regret moves. But what are some low-regret ones?
For decades, the dominant strategy of global business was to optimize for efficiency, to consolidate supply chains wherever costs were lowest. That strategy no longer applies. It might be that companies need to adapt to closed borders and international tensions in a battling Blocs world, or carbon taxes and increased regulations in a climate coalition future. Resilience is now the winning strategy for supply chains.
Energy constraints are also a very visible pressure. Bottlenecks in the infrastructure of fossil fuels are forcing countries to grapple with energy security with new urgency. That can mean establishing new regional suppliers and reprioritizing solar, wind, nuclear, and other sources of energy which can be generated within a country's own borders.
By 2050, the demographics of the workforce will look fundamentally different in almost every major economy. We'll still be working, but across each of our scenarios, employers and governments are grappling with an aging population with more fluid careers than we were used to.
At the same time, agentic AI is already starting to change what work consists of. Businesses need to build new human-machine operating models today that genuinely combine AI capability with human oversight, judgment, and creativity. The companies doing that now are pulling ahead of those still treating it as a future consideration.
These factors also change how jobs are defined. AI is reshaping roles at an unprecedented speed, and the new fundamental currency of hiring and developing is your skills. These could be industry-specific skills, but more generally, they'll be human-centric, like empathy and communication, and skills around interacting and realizing value with AI agents. In our AI abundance and digital Darwinism scenarios, technology brings rapid changes to the workplace. Skilled workers will be much more resilient and adaptable. For organizations, it's about prioritizing continuous learning and resilience, so employees are comfortable when change occurs.
One of the most consequential strategic mistakes an organization can make right now is locking itself into a rigid technology architecture. The AI landscape alone will look completely different in 5 years, let alone by 2050. You need to build modular, swappable systems which allow you to isolate, localize, or replace components as the situation shifts. This future-proofs your tech stacks and means you won't be rebuilding from scratch when things change.
Trust is not a soft consideration here either. As AI permeates supply chains, financial decisions, and customer interactions, organizations that can demonstrate their systems are responsibly managed and independently verifiable will have a material advantage with regulators, with partners, and with customers.
There are many reasons why the relationship between companies and the communities that they operate in will likely shift. In the climate coalition scenario, citizens expect more transparency from firms due to climate stresses. In digital Darwinism, corporations take a lot of the roles of governments. But this isn't pure philanthropy. The organizations that genuinely invested in people's lives will see compounding dividends of trust, something competitors cannot easily replicate.
But it's not just about building trust. Providing a safety net for vulnerable citizens will cushion financial systems from reaching tipping points, where too much pressure can lead to collapse. Businesses and governments can work together to prevent systems like insurance being overloaded, especially as climate damage piles on the pressure.
Many of the forces shaping the world of 2050 are already in motion. But the outcomes of specific policy decisions on trade, on AI governance, on climate commitments, on resource access are still open. Organizations that have built sensing capabilities in these areas will see what's coming before their competitors.
To me, this is one of the most important things scenario thinking builds inside an organization. It shouldn't just be an exercise, but a living function. The habit of monitoring which world is arriving, shorter decision loops, the reflexes to act on early signals rather than waiting for certainty.
And sensing alone is not enough. The organizations that earn a seat at the policy table now will have a material advantage in shaping the environment they operate in, rather than simply inheriting it.
I said at the start that a lot of smart people try to predict the future, and most of the time they're wrong. The secret is to imagine a representative range of futures and to ask, what would happen to me or to my organization or to the planet if this occurred? Where are the opportunities and where are the challenges?
Understanding what's plausible for 2050 allows you to make better strategic decisions today, and to better sense and shape the future as it emerges.
There's plenty more to explore about the scenarios and how to use them in the full report than we could summarize in this video. The link is in the description. I hope these visions of 2050 are helpful to you and your businesses. Thank you for watching.